etc., and dinosaurs. Yes, it would. Now, here's why you don't deal with this stuff with koala bears and kangaroos much. Okay, nobody's saying that koala bears and humans are separated by 65 million years. Nobody's teaching in every single book that's ever been put out on the subject that kangaroos and koala bears and humans are separated by 65 million years. That's not what's being taught. And so you don't have to deal with kangaroos and koala bears. And plus, they're still alive. But if every single book that you've ever read and every movie and every Jurassic Park, Jurassic Park number 27 that's out, a month ago or whatever it was, and they're teaching that humans and dinosaurs are separated by millions of years, the more it's taught over and over and over, the more you have to deal with this thing. And so we can come to this and understand, okay, God made dinosaurs and humans in the first week of creation together at the same time. Now then, the next question is it. As you look at the next question, is there a section in the Bible that discusses a creature that would match the description of what we know to be a dinosaur? Now that's another very important question, because remember we said you wouldn't have the English word because it wasn't invented until 1841. The book of Job is probably the oldest book in the Old Testament, probably reaching back almost to maybe 1600 to 1800 BC. So in this book, you have God coming to talk to Job. Now I think it's interesting. Job is asking God, hey, I don't understand. I don't understand why you're letting me suffer. And God shows up, and do you know what God's main answer is? Hey, Job, have you looked at this animal, and have you looked at this animal, and have you looked at this animal, and you've looked at this animal? I feed them every day. I created all of them, and I take care of them. Could you do that? Job's answer is no. And God basically leaves it with, okay, if I can make these animals and I can take care of them every day, and you couldn't, what does that mean about what I know and what you know? I know more than you, and I'm more powerful than you, and you have to trust that I know what I'm doing. That's God's answer. But his main argument is, look at these animals. And so he gets to Job chapter 40, verse 15, and he says, look now at the behemoth. Notice the text. I think it's very interesting, and God doesn't put words in the Bible just for fun. Which I made along with you. What is God's intent when he says, I made this creature along with you? Job, made him at the same time as I made you, and you can look at him and know he exists and know that you and him, you and this animal, are living at the same time. I made you both at the same time. Okay, well, let's hear about it, man. This guy seems pretty awesome if God's going to use him. The behemoth. Now, you got to pay real close attention here to what's going on. This is the 1901 American Standard Version, which I like. It's a little bit dated as far as its grammar now, and so I don't use it for a reading Bible, but it's very accurate to the text. But over on the side right there is that right there is a translator's note for behemoth. You see the little 6 right there? Goes over, and the translators in 1901 said, well, this is supposed to be an elephant or a hippopotamus. Okay? Well, let's see why they would suggest that. Here's the description of this behemoth. He eats grass like an ox. His strength is in his hips. His power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now, here's what's interesting about the word behemoth. In Hebrew, if you were to be able to read the Hebrew language, you would see that the word behemoth in Hebrew is behemoth. That's it. It's a transliteration. A transliteration is when the people translating the stuff don't know what animal's being discussed, and so they just pull the sounds from the other language and drop it into your language. Now, a translation, you know what a translation is. A translation of a word, lots of times the two words don't sound a thing alike. In Spanish, what's the word for dog? Well, you're supposed to be able to roll your R's. I can't roll them very well, but it's perro, something like that. In English, the word dog sounds like dog. Well, perro and dog don't sound anything alike because that's a translation of a word. Spanish, they're talking about a dog. We know what a dog is in English, and boom, there you go. A transliteration is when there's a creature or something that in the other language you don't know what it is, so you just bring over the same sounds. Okay, so that's what they did here in the Hebrew of Job, brought over the same sounds and said, okay guys, guess what? You guys in English are going to have to work it out for yourself because we don't know what kind of animal it is. So we're going to call it a behemoth in English because it's called a behemoth in Hebrew, and figure it out yourself. Okay, great. Well, let's figure it out. Eats grass. His strength is in his hips. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now remember the 1901 translators, probably because the biggest plant-eating animal in the world at the time, in 1901, is an African male elephant that weighs about 22,000 pounds. It's the biggest plant-eating animal in the world. Just interestingly, if you guys got cows, you understand how difficult it would be to feed a herd of elephants. An elephant can eat 300 pounds of vegetation every single day. Imagine 6 50-pound bags of feed. That's what you'd be feeding the elephant every day. I mean, you're talking consuming massive amounts of food. And so the translators in 1901 probably thought, oh, okay, well, the elephant's the biggest thing we got. Okay, yeah, but hold on just a second. Whatever you say this is supposed to be, it's got to match the description. Now, let's see if your elephant matches the description. When you read in the Bible about a cedar, it's a word that's used to mean something massive, huge, the biggest thing you can think of. We think of cedars, I think, sometimes as little 40-foot, 50-foot trees that you cut down and whittle and make, shelves out of and stuff that smell real good. You're talking about the cedars in the Bible were massive redwood type cedars. Many of them 150 feet tall. The biggest trees in the world. And so when the description of the behemoth is he moves his tail like a cedar. Well, look at this. I mean, indeed, a cedar was a cedar of high stature whose height was like the height of the cedars, of the highest branches of the high cedars. It's the biggest thing that God's got basically to tell. Think about, Job, the biggest tree that you can think of, and that's how big the tail of this thing is. He moves his tail like the biggest tree that you can imagine. This is a picture of a cedar. I don't know if you can see this real well. Let me go back to that. My bad. Go back to this. And one more. Wait just a second. Okay, right here. Yep. I wanted to use my little thing in there. That was my problem. All right. So these guys, work with me. They're real grainy, but those guys right there at the bottom, that's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grown adult men at the base of an oriental type cedar tree. That's the idea of a cedar that the Bible is talking about. A massive tree. So, okay, Job, hey, look at one of the first of the ways of God, the behemoth. I made him along with you, and he swings his tail about like a cedar. Okay, so the 1901 translator said, a behemoth, or they said a hippopotamus or an elephant. Does it look like a cedar to you? I mean, half of us, if your grandma said, go get me a switch, you're in trouble. You bring that thing back, she's sending you back out. That's not even going to be enough. Okay, well, maybe the hippopotamus does a little bit different. The hippopotamus has a very short, flat tail designed to spread fertilizer in water evenly, is what that design is for. Okay, why would you, if you're translating in 1901, say that the behemoth has to be an elephant or a hippopotamus? Here's why. It's very easy. Those are the biggest creatures alive at that time that were plant eaters that would be something big that God would have pointed to. Here's the problem. They don't match the description. Is there a creature that has ever lived that matches the description perfectly? Yeah. I mean, there actually is a creature that has lived and that matches the description perfectly. A huge apatosaurus. You're talking a creature that was 10 times that of an African elephant, that didn't eat 300 pounds of vegetation a day, that ate 3,000 pounds of vegetation a day, whose tail was the size by itself of 3 hippopotamuses. Do we know this creature lived? Absolutely, positively. Now, if this creature lived and God has this creature in his repertoire of what he could point to and show how big he was, would he point to this or to an elephant? Did he describe the thing he was pointing to like this or like an elephant? Well, I think you can see exactly the description. Now, here's what else we find very interesting. Some of these right here can be 116 tons, weigh half as much as a blue whale. And because of their structure, they could use their hip muscles to hold their entire bodies up, and their stomach muscles would extend so hard and firm that they could stand up on their back legs and reach vegetation hundreds of feet in the air with trees. So their strength is in their hips and their stomach muscles, and they have tails that they move like cedars. Does this match the description of a behemoth perfectly? Perfect. Matches it exactly right. The only reason you would not say that that's an apatosaurus is if every single time you've ever heard about dinosaurs, you were told that they were separated from humans by 65 billion years. Well, if humans and dinosaurs are separated by 65 million years, then what God's talking about in Job can't be a dinosaur, can it? Because this says God made it right along with Job, and Job could see it. Well, yeah, he did make it right along with Job, and Job could see it, and the reason that the dinosaur makes perfect sense is because it matches the description, and it is the first of the ways of God. It's the biggest land-living creature anybody's ever seen or ever will see. Matches perfectly. Now, here's the next question. Okay, so that's the biblical question. The next question is, what history say about dinosaurs? You say, well, what do you mean, Kyle? I mean, what does history say? We get all of our information from fossils. Do we, though? I mean, do we get all of our information from fossils? Let's explore that. If dinosaurs and humans live together, now think through me. This is going to be some serious thinking. If they did live together, but we didn't come up with the word dinosaur until 1841. If people actually saw them and talked about them, what would they call them? Because they didn't call them dinosaurs, we didn't come up with the word till 1841. What would the name of the creatures have been when somebody said, hey, look, there's a... Well, what would they said it was? Okay, interesting question. Let's look at this word dragon. You know, when we think of dragons, okay, here's the problem. Here's the real challenge. If I ask you to think of the word unicorn, think of the word unicorn for me. What do you think about when you think of a unicorn? Okay, here's what you think about. Because of the way that we have misconstrued the word unicorn, you think about a beautiful, magical, white, horse-like creature with a spiraling horn that goes directly out of the middle of its forehead that can do magic things and somehow produce ice cream. That's what we think about as unicorns. Okay, if I were to tell you that the Bible in one place mentions a unicorn, what would you say about that? You would say, okay, number one, maybe the Bible. Surely not. Yeah, but here's the problem. The word una and corn means something very specific. A unicycle, U-N-I cycle, means a cycle with how many wheels? One. Una means one. A unicorn means a creature with one horn. Now, if I were to tell you, hey guys, that little idea you got of a unicorn is not really right because a rhinoceros is a unicorn. A rhinoceros, depending on what type you've got, is a creature with one horn. And so is it accurate that if I were to say, hey guys, do you believe the Bible would ever talk about unicorns or people ever lived with unicorns? Most of the time we're like, no, unicorns are fake, they're not even real. And then I put up a picture of a rhinoceros and said, well, that's one. It would then maybe start to dawn on you, oh, okay, maybe what I've always been told about a certain creature wasn't as specific or didn't have the kind of information I needed. And I'd like to unpack that word dragon a little bit. When you think of dragons, well, I mean, most of us are thinking stuff like the Hobbit with a big old dragon like Smaug that can fly around and blow fire everywhere and actually talk and has a heart that's made out of a big gem that looks like an emerald or something and that somehow is okay, that's not how the word dragon was used in the past. Here's what you're going to find out. If you look at literature from 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, they use the word dragon all the time. But it had nothing to do with what we think of a dragon. In fact, the emperor of Japan had a position that he paid a person as a dragon feeder. Paid a guy X number of dollars a month to feed the dragons. If you look in the natural history writings, it will say dog, four-footed beast that has these kind of teeth, deer, a four-footed animal that eats grass, dragon, a four-footed lizard-like creature that has these kind of scales. It was just right in the list of all the other stuff. Now, sometimes the stories got blown out of proportion and elaborated on, and just like when your husband goes fishing and he caught the big one today that was maybe that big. Sometimes maybe they got a little exaggerated. But as you look at this idea of dragons, notice the hostility between man and dragon is not a Western anomaly, it's worldwide. Every culture in the history of the world has talked about a creature they called a dragon. Every one. And they're found in myths and legends of cultures all over the world. People all over the world have believed in dragons. Now, when I say all over the world, you're talking, there's one creature, remember, check this, in legends of every human culture that ever existed, a creature depicted with remarkable similarity by Chinese, Aztecs, even Eskimos who lived in the frozen land where no reptiles are found. You mean to tell me Eskimos tell stories of humongous lizards, some of which have legs, some of which have 4 legs, some of which have 2. They have spikes and horns often on their head. Many times they have spikes on their back, etc. Eskimos tell stories about them? Yeah. What do they call them? Dragons. The Eskimos do. People who had no contact with one another, all of them have stories about this same creature. Now, Animal Planet makes sure it says mythical creature, but let's look at this. So in 2003, we dig up this particular dinosaur. They named the dinosaur Draco Rex. Okay, Rex means king, Draco means dragon. They named the dinosaur the Dragon King. Now, interestingly, they named the dinosaur the Dragon King. They name it Draco Rex Hogwartsia. Is that dawning on you yet? They literally named the dinosaur the Dragon King from Hogwarts, from Harry Potter books. They say because when we dug it up, it looked exactly like the bones of a dragon straight out of the book of Harry Potter. Okay, is that sinking in? So we dig up a dinosaur that we say is 65 million years old. It looks just exactly like the creature that is in every single culture for the last 5,000 years, from the Eskimos to the Aztecs. They use the word dragon to describe it, so we named this dinosaur the Dragon King because the description matches perfectly. Okay, so what's been going on? What creature has been called a dragon for the last 3,000 to 5,000 years of human history? What we would call a dinosaur. Makes perfect sense. And when the people exhibited this at the placard in the museum, they said, when we saw this creature's head, we weren't sure what kind of dinosaur it was. Its spiky horns, bumps, and long muzzle looked more like a dragon. Okay, makes perfect sense then that the creature that's been called a dragon for thousands of years, that's in every culture, is not based on, but is the creature that God created on the 6th day of creation, that we didn't come up with the word dinosaur until 1841. People have been calling it something else for the entire human history of that creature's existence from the beginning. Which, dinosaur, dragon, perfect representation. It's a new type of dinosaur that looks like a dragon. Okay? Perfect sense. Of all the creatures that ever lived, well, I'm going to have to skip through this, although all that's pretty neat stuff. But let's get now to this. Here's what we've got so far. What the Bible says, what history says. If you go to a zoo, went to a zoo not long ago, well, it was a little while back now, And there was a hippopotamus that was in a cage about where you are, this young man on front. And there were two big fences, big metal fences between me and the hippo. But I got to be the closest I've ever been to a hippopotamus. And its head was so big, you could literally take a football and stick it up its nostril. That it was the one of the largest heads of any creature that I've ever been close to. And I thought, wow, that is awesome. I want my kid to see this. What did I do so that my kid at home could see the size of the hippopotamus head that I was looking at? Well, took a picture of it, sent it to them, and said, guys, you should see the head. If you see a creature in 1500 BC and you don't have a phone but you want people to know what it looked like, what do? You can't take a picture of it. You maybe draw it, sketch it, describe it. Okay, so now let's look at the physical evidence. And I'm going to put this statement up here, no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. That's false. Humans have seen live dinosaurs from the very beginning of creation. And as we look at that, we go to places like the Natural Bridges National Monument. And there at the Natural Bridges National Monument, there's the Kachina Natural Bridge. It's the, I think, third largest natural bridge in the world. And as you're looking at this Kachina Natural Bridge, the picture that I'm showing you, if you're there on the scene, you can actually see these much better. But the Anasazi Indians carved things into the rock cliffs all over the area there from Utah and Colorado area. And all of these date to the same time. You can't fake these because there's a desert varnish over them. And so Eric Lyons and I went out to this one specifically because we had heard about it from reading an evolutionist book. And that particular evolutionist wanted to bring attention to this particular carving, and here's why. If you look at that, just prima facie, I'm not saying it is anything. I'm asking you this question: what does that look like? Okay? It's a no-brainer. That's what it looks like to every person that sees it. It looks like a dinosaur. In fact, specifically a large apatosaurus, plant-eating type dinosaur. Now, here's what's funny about that. This guy right here is a man by the name of Fran Barnes. And he's an evolutionist, doesn't believe in creation, is not trying to put together any type of case for humans and dinosaurs living together. In fact, would be appalled at that suggestion. But here's what he says about it. There's a petroglyph in the Natural Bridges National Monument that bears a startling resemblance to a dinosaur. Now, let's look at that word. Let's unpack the word startling. What does startling mean? You know, I guess the best definition I've got of startling is when I was a kid, my dad would sometimes do things like this. He would bring home maybe a 6-foot-long black snake and basically pull it out of the feed sack from the cattle barn that he brought it home from and say, here you guys, here's your pet for the next few days. Let it go when you get done playing with it. And so we would have this black snake, and we'd let it crawl up, wrap around our arms and stuff, and it was fun. Thought it was great fun. And we'd find us something to put it in. So we'd get us a little aquarium, and I remember this particular one. There was it was like a screened off porch from our house, and we put the little aquarium thing there, and we played with our black snake for a little while, and then put him in the aquarium. And got up the next morning, looked in our aquarium, and he was gone. And you know how kids are. We looked for about 12 seconds and thought, I got out. There's a little place underneath the kind of the swinging door that he could go out. And so we thought, well, he just left. And thought he got away. Okay. No problem. About 3 days later, my mom goes into her closet. She's looking for a pair of shoes. And she is startled. Why is my mom startled 3 days later looking in her closet for a pair of shoes? Because she goes looking for a pair of shoes and she finds a 6-foot-long black snake. That's startling. Why? Because you're not expecting to find a black snake curled up in your high heels. That's unusual. It's out of place. You're startled by that. Startling is when you don't expect something and it pops out at you. My youngest son, Reed, is 15 right now, and he loves to hide in the house in different places. And when my wife Bethany and I, or one of us, walk by, him jump out and startle us because we're not expecting him there. We don't look for him to be right behind the kitchen door when we're walking. Okay, this guy's an evolutionist. Why would he say that a carving that looks exactly like a dinosaur is startling to him? Because he's not expecting it. Why wouldn't he be expecting it? Well, he's not expecting it because he's always been told that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. And if no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur, and you got somebody carving dinosaurs 1,000 years before we ever dug up a bone of a dinosaur or more, that's startling to him. It's shocking. It's out of place. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit. Let me ask you this question. If you understand the story of creation and you know that God created humans and dinosaurs on the sixth day and they've been living together from the very beginning of creation, is this startling to you? In fact, it's not startling at all. It's exactly what you would expect. And so the idea that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur would be wrong. And then you would go to something like this particular series of temples over in Cambodia. And in this particular series of temples, you're going to see all kinds of carvings, especially one particular series where there are several different animals, something that looks maybe like a goat or a cow of some sort. And then you're going to go straight to this one right here and just ask the simple question, what's it look like? There's no possible way this could be faked. It's got the regular patina that is in all of the crevices from the entire temple that we know was created in 1187 AD, about 700 years before we ever started digging up a dinosaur fossil, understanding what they were. It's got 40 feet of rock above it, which is several tons of rock. There's no way it could have been pulled out and something else placed in. And so if you're an evolutionist and you don't think humans could ever have seen a live dinosaur, and you come to this right here, the only explanation you can give is, well, it doesn't really look like a dinosaur. We have one particular writer that says, yes, that's not a dinosaur. It's a wild pig with bushes behind it. I mean, you know, that's some real good landscaping right there. Oh, come on, give me my little thing back. No, okay, that's all you're getting on that. I mean, the bushes are perfectly lined up right behind, and that's a pretty substantial tail for a wild pig. Pretty thick as it relates to its body, and then the portion of its head with looks like some kind of horn or something coming out the side of it. I'm not saying what that is, but here's what I am saying. If we know that God created humans and dinosaurs together on day 6, and we know that we've got the historical account of a creature that was called historically a dragon, and we dig up something that looks just like it, and it's a dinosaur. And then we come to a carving that's created in 1187, and it looks just like or very similar to a stegosaurus. Why would a person not say that's a stegosaurus? You know, for the simple reason that they've always been told that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. And that is false information, because humans have seen live dinosaurs, and they've been living with humans from the beginning of creation. They went extinct like so many other creatures have done, but they did exist with humans at one time. Now, let me tell you what's, and it's coming to a close here, but this next piece of information is fascinating to me. A dinosaur fossil, you're told it takes millions of years to fossilize stuff. And when you dig up a dinosaur fossil, they're at least 65 million years old, and some of them they would say go all the way back to 200 million, although those dates are very wrong. But what you're holding in your hand has to be at least 65 million years old. Well, here's what happened with a huge Tyrannosaurus rex femur. They were digging it up, and as they moved it, it broke in half. And it's supposed to be 65. This one was supposed to be 70 million years old. They started looking at the broken Tyrannosaurus rex, what they thought was a fossil, and they realized, hold on just a second, this hasn't been turned to rock. Let me give you a little backtrack and ask you this question and see if anybody knows this. This would be, does anybody know what a coprolite is? A coprolite? Okay, I've got one. It's a small pile of fossilized dinosaur manure. that I often take to schools when I talk about dinosaurs, and I show it to them, ask them what it is, and I explain to them that this is something that's very interesting because it can help you understand what the dinosaurs ate and some different things about digestion and some stuff like that. And then I ask them if they would like to touch it. Do you think I get many takers at first when I say, hey, this is a fossilized dinosaur manure, would you like to touch it? No, I don't get takers. And then I say, well, why? It's just a rock. It's not actually manure. It's fossilized manure. It's manure that at one time was composed of organic stuff, but all of that's been replaced with rock. And they say, oh, okay, all right. And so then they understand. Well, that's what a fossil generally is. All the stuff's been replaced with rock. Okay, well, when they broke open this particular T-Rex femur, it hadn't been replaced with rock. In fact, there were leftover soft tissues of collagen and pieces of red blood cells, and it was so stretchy that you could take tweezers and grab it by the end, pull it apart, let it go, it snapped back together. You're talking about an alleged 70 million year old bone that's not fossilized. It's still got soft tissue in it. At this point, it would have been the honest, right thing for the evolutionary scientific community to say, hey, we've gotten these dates wrong. There had to have been some dinosaurs that lived past what we thought, because soft tissue can't last this long. This is unbelievable that we've never seen anything like it. The lady that reported these findings thought she was going to lose her job, so she did the experiment 5 times to make sure it was real soft, unfossilized material. And then reluctantly she said, this is what we're dealing with. Come to find out, it wasn't just in that femur. There are scores of dinosaurs that there is soft tissue in the dinosaur bone. Instead of saying, hey, we've gotten this 65 million year stuff wrong, here's what they said. We didn't know you could preserve soft tissue for 70 million years. Neither did I. Why? Because you can't preserve soft tissue for millions of years. If there is soft tissue in a dinosaur bone that you said was 70 million years old, you got the date wrong. But instead of saying that, because that would mean humans and dinosaurs could have lived at the same time, they said, oh well, there must be some way to preserve soft tissue for 70 million years. We don't know how it happened, but it must have, because we know that bone's 70 million years old. No, you don't. In fact, you should have changed it to a few hundred or a few thousand, and the fact that you didn't shows your bias toward false information about dinosaurs and humans. And so, as we look at that, we come to this question: where did the dinosaurs go? It's a great question. Unfortunately, we only had an hour on dinosaurs, and so I'm not going to be answering that question today. Hope that you have enjoyed your time with me. I love talking about dinosaurs, and here's the point that I want to make primarily about dinosaurs. My mom was teaching a ladies' class at a small congregation right outside of Columbia, Tennessee, where I live. And in that ladies' class, the ladies in the class, she took our Dinosaurs Unleashed book. This is the book that does a lot of work on what we just did today. Dinosaurs Unleashed. It was our first full-color hardback we ever put out. It's been our number 1 best-selling book for years and years, other than when we got the study Bible, some things of that nature. The ladies, there are about 13 of them, said to my mom, we've never heard anything like this. In fact, the preacher that was here before, the one now, explained to us that dinosaurs were made up, that they never existed, and that in the church, we don't talk about dinosaurs. Let me ask you this question. What's going to happen? You've got a 10-year-old kid, goes to school and learns that there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex that was 20 feet tall at the hips, had a 5.5-foot skull that was filled with 60 serrated, razor-sharp, meat-cutting teeth. And this Tyrannosaurus Rex could bite off a single bite of meat that weighed 500 pounds in one bite. And he sees, or she sees, the pictures from the dig where they pull out a femur from a Tyrannosaurus Rex and gives you the location of that femur, tells you all about when they started the dig, all about all of the information, and comes home to you and says, hey, will you tell me about this? And you say, no, we don't talk about that. How do you think that's going to play with your 10-year-old? Oh, so there's some things in this world that are true or that are out there that my parents don't want to tell me about, don't want to talk to me about? What if, when that kid came home and asked you, you said, I am so excited you brought that up. Let me tell you about some of the most fascinating creatures that our Creator ever designed. And you pull out a book that talks to them about God's amazing design capability, and you tell them about that Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you tell them about that Apatosaurus, and you tell them about that Edmontosaurus, and that Iguanodon, and that Coelophysis, and that Pachycephalosaurus, and you explain all that there is about them, and then you go back to the book of Job, and you say there was a huge creature that God pointed to when he was talking to Job, and he said, Job, look at this creature. This creature shows my awesome capability. And you explain to your 10-year-old son, grandson, daughter, granddaughter, that God's creatures show his amazing power, and everything on this planet that was ever created was designed to bring glory to God, and that their 10-year-old life is an exhibition, is a microcosm of a human created in the image of God, and their job is to bring glory to God too. Isn't it time we take dinosaurs back and use them for what they were designed to be used for? Hey, God is awesome. He made them. He made you. And everything that has breath is designed to say, look at my Creator. Let's take them back and use them to point to the Creator, because that's what they were designed to do in the first place. Okay, we're going to take just a little while of a break, probably about 10 minutes. And if